Hey there, welcome back. I hope you are staying warm. We are staying warm inside, thankfully, but my goodness, Ian, I know it's cold out there where you are too.
Very, very cold. I think my car said it was like -9 as I was getting in today, and that was the warmest temperature of any of the cars that drove in at 4 a.m. this morning. So,
I was going
yeah,
to say,
it's great.
at your time coming in, it's way worse than at my time coming in.
Yes, yeah, it is. It is very cold at my time. There's
hmm
not a bit of sunlight to help at all.
No, and I don't have to be on TV first thing in the morning, so you have it. You have to also look good while you're coming
I
in. I think
do.
that's tragic. So,
I think the hair looked okay. I wore a little local 4 beanie this morning, so the hair is like okay, but not as good as it could be. But we're just gonna go with it and say it's fine.
well, speaking of just going with it, that's what the legislature is doing. We're into
Yes.
the second or third full week of the legislature now.
hmm
I can't even remember what day it is, but we're in there somewhere. And
Exactly. We're in
I know
between
you
day
were.
1 and 60.
We're somewhere between January 7th and April 17th, and who knows? This is like
Exactly.
January 75th, I think.
It feels like it. It really does.
Oh my goodness. Well, last week I know you were off, so we were kind of catching up on all your news this morning, which is welcome back. We're
Yes.
glad to have you. So,
Thank you.
last
Appreciate
week
it. It
was
was a
kind of a
fun
big
week off.
week.
Yeah, just a bit.
There is a bill that we learned about in like right after Thanksgiving. We were contacted by a victim. Her name is Chloe Krull, and she had been just violently assaulted by her ex-boyfriend, and went through what you do, the court system, and the rape kits and all of these things that you have to go through to get to a court hearing, to eventually get to a sentencing, and you have to apply and submit your letter if you want to speak in court. And she was denied, and that for Chloe was very traumatic.
hmm
And because of that, she reached out and said, I've been reaching out to the legislature, I've been reaching out to the attorney general's office, and we need to fix this, because Nebraska law says you could submit or read a victim impact statement. And judges in Lancaster County appear to have been taking that as it is their discretion whether or not a victim can read a statement, not the victim's discretion. And so we'd started working with the Attorney General's office, and they were kind of waiting. They didn't know who was going to sponsor it. They didn't know what it was going to look like. And finally it got introduced last week, which was so exciting. I've talked to a couple of victims for that story. It is on our website. Highly recommend you check it out. But the bill was sponsored by Senator Bozen. And it does a couple of things that I think are super interesting. Number one is it puts the decision to speak back in the hands of victims, not judges. It also
and that's a big deal. I don't think
yeah,
people realize how big of a deal that
it's
is. That
huge.
is, especially the victim impact statement portion of it. When you have gone through something traumatic and a judge is now having to consider exactly how hard that was for you, that's a lot.
It is kind of unbelievable that that was even an issue at
Yeah.
all, especially with the way the law is written. I mean, it's really like the power of or is in there. The bill also has some
Or a very
protections
interesting
for
word in our
Marcy's
legal
law as well.
system.
It,
Yeah.
when you look at the way that bills are written, and the Attorney General even said there's no wrongdoing. The judges aren't wrong. It's not an intentional act, but this is really harmful. And that's what Chloe had talked about. And then I'd also talked to Tiffany Yant, whose father, Ross Bartlett, was the Ceresco police officer killed by the man on his phone. I was at that sentencing where Tiffany's right to speak had been denied. And the judge actually asked Tony Pierce, who was the man that had been on his phone when he hit Officer Bartlett's car, he asked Tony Pierce, hey, do you have anything that you want to say to the family? So it was really shocking for her to have her right to speak denied. Meanwhile, the man that killed her father was asked, do you have anything to say? Just very traumatic, I think, in terms
Yeah.
of the healing process.
Absolutely.
And it goes in hand with a handful of other bills that have been introduced to protect victims of crime and domestic violence. Senator Prokop's bill, which increases the penalties if you violate protection orders. That's LB 1000. And then LB 818, which is a Storer bill, I believe, which makes the strangulation penalties even stronger. So almost a dozen bills aimed at domestic violence victims of crime this session. So as I haven't checked this morning, and I should have, I apologize, but 1181 hasn't been scheduled for a hearing as of yet, but has a ton of backing from the AG's office and from other senators on the floor as well.
Exactly. And I think that I don't want to use the word help, but it definitely is a factor. All of the domestic assault and abuse cases that we've seen in Nebraska over this past year, that is shedding a light on this and getting some of these to the floor where they need to be. I think that we're also going to see some changes when it comes to police and how their reporting system goes. I've got a story. I don't want to give too much away, but I've been working it for a couple weeks, and basically it's someone who is trying to follow all of the steps to say, hey, I'm afraid for my life, for my child's life. And the police department, I'm not going to name the police department because they've been very helpful to me, but they've not even responded to a single contact of hers. They went out to her house. She was assaulted, and they said, you know what, it looks like both parties were at fault, so they closed the case and left, and that's been the last she's heard from them. And I've been working with the PIO there trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and the PIO has given me steps, and I've been saying, okay, we've followed those steps. Now what? I think that we're hopefully going to see that either later this year in the session. They have only a couple more days to introduce bills, but I hope that we see some changes there as well. I think that's one of the places that we'll see lawmakers start to talk about.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing from that. And it's not very often that we get to talk to the people who are impacted by these bills.
No.
So if there are bills coming up in the legislature, whether it's this one, whether it's any of the DV or crime-related ones, if you are impacted by this and you are willing to share your story, that makes the world of difference when it comes to us being able to report on these bills. As much as we love our senators, we love our committee hearings, we love all of that, hearing from the people that it impacts is much more important than hearing 3 minutes of committee hearing and moving on. It makes
the committee hearings are a blast, but they mean nothing if you can't hear from somebody who that committee hearing impacts.
Correct. So I'm excited to see where your reporting goes with this. I think that's going to be really great. And speaking of committee hearings, there is a hearing tomorrow at 1:30 for the Education Committee, and there's a bill out of that you've been watching.
Oh, there's like 15 bills out of that I've been watching. But we're going to go ahead. I want to switch to a little bit of a lighter subject and talk about communism. I know it's not the most light subject out there, but it's a little bit different just the way that the state of Nebraska is kind of looking at it. So Merman, I believe he's still the chair of the Education Committee, if I'm not wrong. But he introduces some interesting bills. Last year, he introduced the bill that would have required the 10 Commandments in schools, and that was an interesting case. I did I think that was my first deep dive article where I reached out to him and I'm like, so you're saying this bill isn't about a specific religion, but you have a religious figure coming to speak on it. It was very interesting. Check that out. That's a fun one. But Merman is one of the bills that he's sponsoring this session around would require the state to teach communism. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull up and summarize a little bit of this. They'd have to teach the history of communism in the United States, including domestic communist movements and their associated histories and tactics, atrocities committed in foreign countries in the name of communism, comparative discussion of political ideologies. I'm going to go ahead and skip the rest of that one. The increasing threat of communism in the United States and its allies to the 20th century, Cultural Revolution, People's Republic of China, Soviet Union, mass killings under communist regimes, suppression, persecution of various faiths under communist regimes, and the economic, industrial, and political events that precede communist revolutions. Now, I promised everybody I'm not going to read the bills in depth as much as I like to, so that was all I'll read today. But this bill has so much attached to it. So one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit, I'm a Cold War buff. I was telling Darsha earlier that one of my favorite songs is Duck and Cover, where you have Bert the Turtle. If you know all that, it's fantastic. You should check it out. It's the best 9 minutes of your life. But very interesting video back then. And so I know a lot about that era of history. And one of the things is, if you're going to teach about domestic communism, you're going to learn about the Rosenbergs. But and the Rosenbergs were, of course, some of the first people actually killed, and I think they were the only people actually put to death for what was it? It was they gave nuclear plans to the Soviets. I don't remember. I think it was espionage is the word that they were prosecuted under. But basically, they put this man and his wife to death, and now historians are saying, hey, there was some evidence inside the government that they knew that this guy's wife was not a spy and was not affiliated, but they wanted to scare people enough that they actually put her to death as well. Not really a fun fact, but the more you know about the Cold War history, the more you know about the Red Scare. And so I think that this would be a really interesting thing to teach kids. My personal opinion, though, it's got to be done right, and I'm really curious to see this bill be discussed under that. How are they going to look at this? How are they going to interpret this? What is going to be taught? What isn't going to be taught? Because communism is such a broad term. So my coworkers in here, at least in Hastings, they can verify that if I get mad at something, I call it a communist plot, because in the United States, we've kind of just turned the word communist into anything that we don't like.
Correct.
And so I'm really curious to see if this is communism or if this is American fear of communism, if that's what we're going to do. But, you know, we're bringing back the Red Scare, and Senator Merman is introducing that bill, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to just see what happens with it, where it goes, and quite frankly, what ends up happening with it. Is this going to be something like Senator Lippincott's released religious instruction, where it tanks the education bill at the end of it? Or is this going to not even make it in there? Is this going to be taken seriously? Where is this going to go? There's just so much to look at for this one.
I think it's really interesting, especially when you mention the term we use communism to describe anything that we don't like or anything that we're afraid of. And because of that, I actually made sure that we wrote down some definitions and some examples. If you're confused or concerned, because it's easy to confuse things, right? Communism,
it is absolutely
far left,
it is.
Classless, stateless, moneyless society. Good examples: the USSR. Modern day example: China. This is what we think of when we think of
North
this
Korea.
is communism, right? Fascism.
Well, there are classes in North Korea, but you know,
there are classes in North Korea. Fascism, far right, authoritarian, strict social classes glorifying the state. Best example: the Nazis. And then socialism, collective welfare, center left with the allowance of some private property. And this is socialism is an interesting one because you hear that a lot from people on the right, like everything is socialism. The best, most undiluted example of socialism, no opinion on this, good or bad, is Cuba. And the political history and timeline of Cuba is pure, unadulterated socialism for a lot of that. And it's a very interesting case study. Not good, not bad. I'm not weighing in on this at all.
No, we're
So
not weighing.
Deep dive.
That's not what we do on this show.
Correct. We're just bringing you the facts here, and the fact is that is an excellent example of the idea and ideology of socialism. You did mention Senator Lippincott's religious instruction bill.
That is not on the agenda for tomorrow.
Not at all.
But it would not surprise me if that came back. I think that was something that, so if I understand it correctly, last session, he had kind of worked to get that in the final education bill, and there was an agreement, but that agreement was stifled, and then everybody kind of fell apart in the last minute, and that was like the last bill last session that actually made it through, if I remember right.
I think Merman kind of pushed to bring some of that back as well.
I think he did, yeah. There was, so I remember I had seen that portion was up for debate, because so what happened was it was stripped out as an amendment, then it was stripped back in, then it was out again, and Lippincott had introduced an amendment to bring it back in, and I remember he was getting ready to go on the floor, and I reached out to him and I said, "What is happening here?" And he said, "And here's your 15-minute warning. I'm pulling it because I don't want this to derail our education bill." Because I think that it would get in and it would pass to get in, but then it would not actually make its way into the final bill wouldn't pass. And so that was his concern.
Well, we will see. That hearing is tomorrow at 1:30 for the Education Committee. We'll see what comes out of that. And then as we're wrapping up here, two bills that we've talked about quite a bit are Cal's transgender bathroom bills and gender-affirming care bills. Those are both scheduled for hearings Wednesday and Thursday at 1:30. So we'll be there covering those, and we'll bring you all of the updates from that in next week's episode of Lunch and Legislature. But until then, Ian, anything you have to add?
Yes, I don't want to forget Senator Dan McEwen is in court today. I don't think we're going to be spending a lot of time on that, but just wanted to remind everybody he is in court because this was not just a expulsion from the legislature. This was also legal charges against him.
Correct.
So,
And I
I'm
checked the
curious to see what's
documents
gonna
this
happen
morning.
there.
There's nothing has changed. He hasn't filed anything, at least the last time I checked. So we'll see.
Yeah,
He's scheduled in
me either.
court in an hour from now. So we'll see how that pans out.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Ian, thanks for joining me, and we will see you next week.
See ya.